Eric? Siegfried? Wished to make a bargain for her? Osrith felt herself growing weak. Sell her to the Norse for peace? But then her preservation responses got to her mind, as her heart beat full in her chest. Not only did they know who she was, they had known for a long time, and had already used her in political negotiations. Her mind could only suggest one course of action. She had to run with the only piece of information she had. Pika was in Winchester, as was her brother. And the Frisian fishing boat went that far south, and it was due to pass that way in about an hour after delivering to Dunnottar. Scrambling down to the kitchens, Osrith nodded to Glimmery as he waved his innocent hand towards her. She forced herself to walk as slowly and nonchalantly as she could until she got to the stone alcove on which lay her cloak. She knelt on it, easing out the brick. She fumbled for the bottom of the stream, splashing in the cold water as she reached for the little mound of earth raised from the rest of the stream bed. Returning the block, Osrith slipped the cloak around her shoulder, stowing the damp silver in her leather jerkin. Sbe wrapped her left arm around it, covering it with her cloak. It was all she could do. Raiding Glimmery's table and stowing it in a clean linen sheet, Osrith slipped out of the tiny kitchen door. AMD proceeded past the herb garden towards the river bank. No one had stopped her, no. Osrith told herself sharply, don't turn round. Just look to the side for the Frisian fishing boat. How could she signal to them? Further along was much better, where exposed riverbed angled more shallowly and she could stand to hail them. And dash. Osrith broke off. For there was a blade at her throat. She froze, as her attacker walked around in front of her. It was Seinid. Was that it, then? Was he going to take her back, or kill her? But, instead, Domhnall's head of the household guard lowered the blade, and pulled her to him, stroking her shoulder gently, affectionately. She remembered him doing all those years ago when he had taken her hand, at the first victory feast, to celebrate her first battle, that he had tried her in. Osrith had been serving the food, and Seinid had held her hand much longer than a mere brief accident could explain. What if I told you I was of Bibbenberg? Osrith whispered by his ear, accusingly. What if I told you my uncle still seeks me after all this time to sell me to the Danes? And that Domhnall would sell me to the Norse? Seinid resheathed his blade, which he had pressed by her back, then stepped away from her, passing it to her. After a moment, Osrith realized it was Tahtsiek's. He placed two hands on her shoulders as Osrith fixed the blade to her hip. Nothing you would ever do would surprise me, Osrith, he said quietly, looking seriously into her eyes. I wanted to train you because they know you are the lost girl from Bibbenberg. And, from a stake in the ground just behind her, Seinid pointed to a stake rope on which a horse was tied, small, dappled grey, one Osrith had practiced riding on many times. She looked between the horse and Seinid, whose pale eyes wait still looking intently at her. You are no longer a girl. Do you have somewhere to go? I am leaving to find my brother, Osrith replied. Then suddenly, he embraced her in his arms, strong arms, which held her close to him. For once, Osrith wanted to willingly do with Seinid what she had ever done with Constantine, responding to his touch. Her skin felt prickly, hot, her body wanted to press further in, for him to press further in. He had always looked out for her, and now Seinid had made Osrith's job of leaving that much harder. He kissed her, softly, like the first snow of winter landing on skin. He never asked, she never offered. Under different circumstances, she and Sainid could. Then, he pushed her gently away. His black hair and pale blue eyes of the Gales held her in his gaze. Now, go. Sainid did go round the bend, 2 miles. You can pay any boat to take you away from here. He pointed to a boat which was the very one she wished to board. It was coming the other way, and within minutes would be tying up to Selfish to Glimmery. What Osrith needed was to catch it on its journey back, and out of the Forth River into the North Seam. On before FX stood Gert, now, apparently, the captain. She turned to say goodbye to Sainid, to thank him. But, he was gone. Not just retreating, but not in her view at all. 2 hours later, letting the horse find its way home, Osrith did manage to signal to the Frisians, offering silver, less than Sula, but Gert was delighted with it, especially when all he had to do was take her to Hampton. And, in time, she heard the distinctive screaming yell of the Gaelish and the lyre sounded by the Norse. The rage of battle. Eric and Siegfried were trying again. And Osrith was not there, for she was on her way to find her brother.